Good morning, students. So today we are going to be covering the topic of perspectives. So much so to look at it from a sociological perspective. Essentially, what we're going to be doing is understanding how our understanding, which is a subjective understanding, really governs how we see the world. And the way that we're going to be doing this today is kind of talking about different ways that we can view things, how our opinion, which is based around a very much cultural and socialized dynamic, impacts our choices, our directions, and our paths. So to do this, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you some slides. I'm also going to be asking you to pause this lecture or stop this lecture and watch a video and then come back. Now, I know not all of you are going to do that, but it does help with the experience. If you were in my classroom, you would do this. It kind of shows you this ability to see how perspectives can shift. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to take you through a little bit of my slide presentation as towards what does or does not benefit this. So what you're looking at essentially is this. Perspectives are how we are able to alter our perspective, right? This is the dynamics of how we engage in everyday life, how we view things, how we act, what we see, what we don't see, how we understand things versus how we are understood. So what is a perspective? I hope you're thinking about that and wondering what it is. Well, a perspective is how you view the world, right? Right here, we're looking at this picture frame, right? We're looking at a frame, it's a blank canvas, right? Our visual representation of what we see is what we build around the construction or the frame that holds that image in the middle. So a framework, the social framework of which we build our life from is governed and built through us by our parents, by our friends, by our family, by media. It may insert type of instruction here. This is how we start building how we view things. This is where you can gain biases, implicit, racial, all these different things, because it may be socialized or coaxed into you by your unknowing coercion in some ways. Now that sounds a little deceitful or deceptive, but the reality is that we are a product of our environment many times more than we even realize. So let's take an example here, right? Right now we're looking at a photo. You should see it on your screen of some people going to the pyramids, right? So this must be in Egypt, right? Yeah, it's got to be in Egypt. The pyramids, the camels, they got to be in Egypt. Okay, so this is a perspective from the ground level, from a different perspective. I was the one taking this photo, as you can see, was taken by Jennifer Pickens. This would be the apex look. We're looking at the pyramids. And if I was to ask you when this was, you may not be able to give me a date because you would be looking for the carbon connection, right? Well, how old was there anything here that stands out, right? Whereas the clothes, no, this looks pretty like it could be at any point in time, at least in modern society, because we're seeing some types of clothing that would persist. But what if we take a step back? Those are the same pyramids in the background, right? But now we've taken a further step back, realizing that a community, a society is surrounding this. But many of us think of the pyramids. Fun fact, if you'd like to know, the best view of the pyramids is actually at Pizza Hut, #commercialism. It's great. Seriously, if you ever go to Egypt, the Pizza Hut has the literal best view towards looking at these pyramids. But when we step back, we can see things from a different light. When we allow ourselves to think outside our own construction of reality, we start seeing the truths. We start seeing that there's more to everything than what we think, right? The world is not just some small one-sided perspective, one view. We'll talk later in this course about Thomas' theorem, which is this idea that the subjective truth of something is true, whether it be bad or good, based on our own perception. It's a much bigger conversation to have. We're not going to have it right now, but that's what's being said here. So this is where I'm going to be having you pause the video shortly. Essentially, we're going to have a little class activity. Now, I know we're online, so participation is really if you're going to want to do it. I can't know that you're doing it. I do have ways on Canvas to see if you click links, but I don't really want to do that to you. I don't really want to panopticon you. What I'm going to be doing is showing you what are the perspectives that we build, understand, and take forward. Essentially, this is it, right? What is the perspective of these songs? What are the songs trying to convey? How are these songs different? This is what I want you to ask yourself when you're watching these videos. These videos are located on your Canvas under this, around these videos under watch. Essentially, I have given you these videos and YouTube links. The first thing I want you to do is listen to the song by the Proclaimers. It's the original. Listen to it. It's a bop. 500 miles translates all time. Then I want you to ask yourself, what is this song? What is the perspective of this song? What are they trying to convey? And then I want you to listen to Sleeping at Last. It's a cover of the Proclaimers, word for word, by the way, just changing cadence, tone, and opinion. How are these songs different? What are the Sleeping at Last cover perspectives in this song? What is this song trying to convey? And what do you think changed? I've heard plenty of answers from different students. So before you get going, pause this video, watch these videos, or do it on your own time. And then we will go forward with this. So I have a little bit of a part here where I want to talk to you about sociology, right? What is sociology? Well, it's a scientific or systematic study of society and social behaviors, meaning, because that's a lot of gobbledygook, right? We examine the behaviors of others. We look at how the world interacts and find patterns. We find categories. We look for what makes it interesting, because people watching is really fun, right? It's really fun to people watch. It really is. And then what differs sociology from psychology is we look at the external factors. So what does the external, the world around us, how do we act in the perception of reality, the social interactions, and why does that make a big impact on our lives? Psychology, on the other hand, for those of you taking Psych 101 or psychology majors, they focus on the internal factors, the I. We focus on the we. Little fun video here at TikTok. I'm going to play a little bit of it here for you.
So sociology is the study of society and the people within it. It's a little bit different to psychology. We really look at the interaction between, can society change an individual? Do individuals change society? So there's loads of things that you look at. It will depend on what school you go to and what specification you do. But for AQA sociology, which is what I do at this school, we look at education, we look at family, and we look at research methods in year 12. And then we also look at the theory behind all of these. So functionalism, Marxism, feminism. We look at crime, and we look at media. Crime's a really interesting topic because it looks at why do people commit crime, what can we do to help the relationship between social class and education, or gender and education.
You're more than welcome to watch the rest of that video if you'd like on your own, but essentially this person's just talking about what they do as sociologists. There's so much you can do with sociology, and I'll talk about this perpetually throughout the entire class. As you may have learned in my introductory video, I didn't follow the academic path, and I did very well, because understanding or having a scientific or systematic study of society and social behaviors, name me a field where analyzing people doesn't matter. It does. So let's look at this in a little different, right? Sociology, macro level issues, larger structural concerns. Then we also look at micro level issues, smaller scale interactions. These words are important for you, so write that down. Macro being large, micro being small, and you could say median, which is kind of the middle level area, but the two primary areas is macro and micro. For example, this is one that I love. Say that someone in your family was stealing food, or someone you know was stealing food for their family, right? In psychology, that's a crime, right? Criminology, that's a crime because you stole. But what if we step back, right? What if we took a look at the social factors impacting this person's choices? What if this was desperation? Is it still wrong if someone is that hungry that they can't eat? There's still wrong in it. There's still deviance in it, right? But could we understand it differently if we understood the social ramifications of what led to this person's choice to deviate from the norms of society? So sociology tries to take a look at different things from not just the perspective of right and wrong. We also look at the idea of these social factors that influence, impact, and build upon our understanding of the everyday life. I have a little video here. I'm going to play a few snippets of it. You're always welcome to watch all of these on your own.
So sociology is the study of the development, structure, and function of human society. So when you're taking these classes in your undergrad studies, you're basically learning about the theories behind social movements, etc., etc. Social work is the academic discipline and practice-based profession that concerns itself with individuals, families, groups, communities, and society as a whole. So this is a profession and you're practicing all the evidence-based stuff that you learned in class. I will make a part 2 because there's just not enough time for me to complete my thoughts. But the reason why I tell you that you can use your sociology or social work degree in numerous ways is because of the skills you learn in those classes. And mind you, I didn't realize this until I started going into entrepreneurship.
The rest of this video is interesting, but I think that she hit a point there. I also want to point out, please don't confuse sociology and social work. It's been a consistency of annoyance. I'm even annoyed that this video does that, but this individual does a great job of talking. The reality is social work is a different field than sociology. Can you work as a social worker in the sense of working for children's services? Sure. You can do a lot of things with your sociology degree, but let me state this as broadly as I can. Sociology is the study of human behavior. It's understanding why people do what they do. It's understanding how perspectives impact our reality. It's understanding why cultural phenomenons are so impactful to our everyday life, which we'll be covering in a short lecture shortly after this. So if you're looking to wonder what you would do with sociology, talk to me. email me. I can tell you about it. I was a director of a marketing company. I've been a successful salesman. I'm a professor. I have done a lot of things. I have a friend who works for the Department of Defense. I have a friend who I have a friend, not a friend, I have a former boss who is the CEO of a tech startup because he wanted to use social integration and interaction to help hire people. Spoiler alert, that's ZipRecruiter. He's a sociologist. You might know the name. It's really what you want to do with it. So let's take a little bit further back. Okay, so C. Wright Mills wrote the book on what is called the sociological imagination. If you're interested. Okay, that failed. I'm going to leave that in because I think that's funny. That's the book, Sociological Imagination. It was written in 1959, essentially looking at what is the imagination that we spur of understanding and looking at this, looking for the familiar and the strange, and looking for anything that we can to find that line of how the world really works. What are the functions? What are the connections? What are the oddities that really master this understanding? Simply, each person's biography is embedded in social history. We are a part of the world and the world's a part of us. Individuals' lives are linked to what's happening in society. Our ups, downs, and perspectives are based upon what is happening now. We're not very great as humans at looking too far in the future or too far in the past. History tends to repeat itself. Hegel famously said that, and Marx famously corrected him, saying the first time was a tragedy, the second time was a farce. It's sad but true. And being able to see the connection between personal troubles and public social issues, that's where this skill comes in handy. When you can just spot the oddities, it becomes kind of like a little bit of a gift and a curse. That's why I tell people all the time with the sociological imagination that if you can see it, you have to be able to understand it. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? It's the glass shattering effect. For any of you who don't know that term, if one of your friends told you that your other friend was a loud eater, you would never noticed. You're never going to unsee that. So suddenly you may now always be annoyed by your friend eating, but being able to spot those differences, the strings, and hear these terms used in day-to-day life, so important. But perspective is this, right? It ties to a few different things. Essentially, you can look at this chart right here of how social institutions tie down to all the different dynamics of institutions that build our life and the socialization methods that really work with us. Well, the idea of when you first came to this university and once you left high school, you started gaining what's called agency, personal ability to act. When you were in elementary school, middle school, high school, and now as you're entering college, a lot of the times agency was chosen for you. Now you're gaining more personal agency or an ability to choose what you want to do. We all have agency to act the way we want. There is a structure that surrounds us. Durkheim famously stated that society is bigger than the sum of its parts. Society will be here when you leave, when you pass away, and it was here when you were born. The other side is society also doesn't exist without us. Everything about society is a social construction. Everything that we do. Look at this idea of all the things that we've built, right? The social institutions and the social perception of life is this giant social construction made to enforce patterns, behaviors, and rules of law. We'll go further into that later in this class. But how society is set up and organized is really based upon mechanisms of patterns to enforce social order. And this is what social institutions can use, or things that are called social institutions, to develop rule of law, standard practice of living, return to normal, you may have heard on a regular basis when we were in the midst of the COVID pandemic, right? So social institutions can tie anything from families, governments, economies, healthcare, education, work, religions. All of these are institutions that we've built. They don't exist without us wanting them, but they exist without us even after now. To build up the society, we built it. It's a social construction, but it is greater than the sum of its parts. It will exist until way after our time, and the only reason it exists is because of us. It's kind of this kind of paradoxical construct. It doesn't exist without us, but it does exist without us once we depart, since it's been established. So when we're looking at the sociological perspective, we will study the concepts and examples that describe how people act within society. That's important. We use our sociological imaginations and practice it throughout this course. I want you to start thinking about what makes this world tick. Look at all of your interactions with your friends, your family, mess with them. I'm going to teach you some tricks to do so. Start playing with and building in a sociological imagination. It's a gift and a curse, sure, but it's better to have it than to not have it. We will learn ways to view society and analyze social behaviors within it. This class, for most, is going to show you some things that you didn't think about, because we're so good at following the habitualization of society that many of us don't stop and ask why. Here's a fun question. You want to mess with people? When someone's talking to you and you're in a grocery store and someone says, "Hi, name here. How are you today?" Normal interaction in the United States, right? Well, you've also entered a social contract in a conversation. If you literally just decide to tell that person 150 things that went wrong for you that day, they will sit there for a very long time. Some people love to see how long they can make people sit, but there's so many ways that our social behaviors can be manipulated. And then I want you to start thinking critically about society and how it is set up. We have social problems to solve, and it's going to be your generation, the generations after you, that start looking at solutions, because generational change is when you start seeing real social change. So I just want to emphasize this. This class is what you make of it, right? You can come here, do the bare minimum and get the grade that you want. People do that. And you can come here, work hard and change your perspectives. It's really important. It's really something that I think you need to think about, right? So I personally adhere to the idea of talking, discussing, and hearing people's thoughts on this topic is crucial. Share your thoughts on Yellow Dig, especially with regards to the video. Ask questions. We're not in person, so raising your hand is not going to be as applicable. When I do host Zoom, which I may or may not do, raising your hand in the function is a good idea, right? Civility and conflict is important. Learn how to have the hard conversations. If you only surround yourself with yes people, you're never going to grow. You're not. You have to be able to have hard conversations to expand your knowledge, and also treat those with respect when you're discussing them. But some fun quotes for you here. We have Socrates, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. And then one of my favorite from Salvador Dali, intelligence without ambition is a bird without wings. Those are some interesting points that I find. And just in general, so I'm super excited to have you in this course. Like I said in the introductory, social perspectives are huge. And I hope that you're able to take this information, and I hope you're able to build from it. Because in the next lecture, we're going to talk about culture, which we have some fun topics like culture shock. But the perspectives thing is honestly one of the most powerful things you're going to run into in this class. Start looking at things from the structural functionalist perspective, which we'll cover in your readings this week. The idea of society functions as a living and breathing unit, right? That we are a living and connected dynamic. And that everything has a purpose, and there's a purpose for everything, right? And then we have conflict theory. The inequalities and inequities have caused people to be at a rift of inabilities to function together. That also adheres to the construct behind the idea that wealth is not shared equally. The bourgeoisie and the proletariats, those who have and those who have nots, right? The power is in the hands of the 1%, and they make all the choices, and we adhere to that. We need to look ways to systematically change this so that we can have more equal standing. But what does that mean? How does that work, right? We'll talk about that with Karl Marx. And then we have the idea of symbolic interactionalism, which is one of my favorites. Symbols have such power, right? This is a good symbol here, but in another country, this is telling you to F off, right? You have the idea of okay, right? Saying something's okay. Well, that also got connected to white power briefly. So like as symbols change, we have to take into consideration the value adhered within those symbols. So this has been a lecture on perspectives. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, smash that like button. No, I'm just kidding. If you like that, please make sure to bring up what you liked in Yellow Dig. That's what we're using it this semester for, is to have more conversations. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next lecture. We'll speaking to you in the next lecture. We will be covering culture in the next lecture, which means that we'll be talking about the things that govern and surround us on a day-to-day basis. All right, thank you.